because I speak Arabic at the level of grade 4. And I thought it was important as well that the presentation should be in English, especially when we're talking about business, because you're going, for those who are thinking about doing a business, you're going to be doing business entirely in English for the most part. So what I'm going to share today and over the next 3 sessions is going to be, an entry level and kind of a roadmap on what you have to do and what it takes to start your own business and to succeed in having your own business. Today is very entry level. Really, we're starting from the beginning, so we're not going to dig into a lot of the important things in business, like marketing and understanding competition, but learning, how to start, how to register, what financing is available, etc. So I'm going to start with the story of my own business, Sharp Insurance. Like most people in Calgary, I actually started, prior to Sharp Insurance, I was in oil and gas. So I entered into the insurance business actually not knowing anything about insurance. So back in 2009, I was working with an oil field service company. I was working in sales. And a friend of mine was working in the insurance industry. And the more I learned about the insurance industry, the more I realized that there were some big opportunities to do things different and try to bring a different spin to insurance. So I proposed to my friend to start a company. We each put in $5,000 and we started Sharp in August of 2009. 6 years later, there was 2 of us that started. We're now over 50 employees, and we're by far the fastest growing insurance brokerage in Canada. We write volumes of business that some of the large banks in Canada write. And that came from not knowing anything about insurance, but it's understanding the fundamentals of business. So I want to start by going over what the 5 signs are that you think, that you would have before you would want to start a business. The 5 signs that, you kind of feel before you say, yeah, I'm ready to start my own business and go out on my own. So the first sign is that your job is no longer fulfilling. You go to work every day, same thing, nothing exciting, no challenge, and of course, nowadays it's the fear of, do I walk in and do I have a job, or am I going to get laid off today? Especially in the environment that we're in. The second sign is that you actually have an understanding of the risks involved in owning a business. Owning a business is not just as simple as opening the doors and starting to sell a product or sell a service. There's some serious risks, and the reality is most businesses actually fail. Not as many businesses succeed as fail. And most fail because business owners don't understand what the risks are of starting a business. You have an idea that you're passionate about. So there's something you're interested in, there's something you want to build, there's something you want to sell, and you're passionate about it. If you're thinking of starting a business just for the sake of making money, if you want to open up a pizza shop, for example, and you're not passionate about making pizza, you're probably not going to succeed. And that's in most things in life. If you're not passionate about what you do, there's just not going to be any success. You have to have a support system. This is fundamentally important. If your family does not support you, if your wife or husband does not support you in starting a business, it makes it extremely complicated because there is a lot that goes into it. It's not just money. There's a lot of time, there's a lot of sacrifice, and it requires a strong support system, even from within the community. is extremely important to ensure that a business is going to succeed. And the last thing is you have to know what's important to you. Why are you starting the business? Is it because you want the freedom to work less hours? You want the freedom to come and go as you please? You want to make more money? You want to travel? Whatever it is, you have to know what you want to ultimately get from the business, aside from just making money. Because no matter what we do, everyone wants to make money, whether it's in a job or in a business. So the very first fundamental thing you have to do to start a business is have a business plan. I can't tell you how many business people I've talked to that start a business without doing this one fundamental piece. And this is probably one of the most important things to do in a business. It's what forces you to think about everything on how the business is going to run. Now the business might evolve and you might not stick to your business plan, but this is an important step to start out. So business plans include things, you're going to hear a lot of these terms when you decide to start a business and you want to write a business plan, doing an executive summary, looking at the market and the landscape for what you want to do, business and market strategies, so how you're going to operate the business and how you're going to market that business, doing competitive analysis. The business that you want, unless it's something brand new that hasn't been done, there'll be competitors in the market that you want to compare against and see what they're doing right or what they're doing wrong, so you can capitalize on that. Doing an operations and management plan, and then financial considerations. Now financial considerations of all the things on there, that's probably the single most important thing, because that's the one thing on there. I mean, if you wanted to do a business plan and skip everything else, financial considerations is the most important, because it's going to force you to think about how much money you're going to put in and how you're going to spend that money and how that money is going to come back. So it forces you to think about a lot of things that you normally wouldn't. When you're going to work day to day, you're going to do a job. There's different departments inside the organization, whether it's accounting or marketing or whatever it is, that thinks about all the fine details. But when you start your own business, you're everything. You're the president, you're the janitor, you're head of marketing, you're head of accounting, you're everything when you start a business. So it forces you to think about all of these things. And I've actually brought, for anybody who's interested afterwards, I actually brought a copy of our original business plan and our financial considerations when we started Sharp. And even though Sharp is nothing like what we had even planned here, it was still a starting point, and it was the basis point of what we had to do and the things we had to think about in order to get the business to succeed. So if you're more than welcome to come and see it afterwards. So there's resources that are available to you to think about how to build a business plan and the fundamentals of a business plan. So there are online sites that offer business plan templates to be able to do it yourself. So you don't have to think about it from scratch. It really forces you to think about all the different pieces of the business and really fill in all the parts. There's business classes that offer tutorials on how to build a business plan. CDI College, Bow Valley College, Mount Royal University. A lot of these organizations offer classes on how to build a proper business plan. There's government resources, and there's courses available through the government, business planning and business plan building courses that you can find online. And the last one is actually hiring a professional. Now this costs a little bit of money to hire a professional to build a business plan, but a professional also forces you to think about things, and you bring somebody in that may look at your business or your future business in a way that you may not see. Because nobody starts a business by thinking, I'm going to fail. Everyone starts a business by thinking, yes, I can do this, I'm ready to start a business, and I'm going to succeed, and I'm going to make money, and I'm going to grow the business. Even though the statistics show most of the time that doesn't happen. But a business, hiring someone to help you with a business plan forces you to think about a lot of these things that you may not overlook, especially if you haven't had a business before. And the one thing I left out of there, when I was talking earlier about the story of Sharp Insurance. Prior to Sharp Insurance, I had a business previously. And I started the business when I was 22 years old. And by the time I was 24 years old, I had actually lost the business, and it cost me $500,000. Basically, it cost my parents $500,000 in the mistakes that I made along the way in the business. So the second time around with Sharp, I learned the lessons from the first time and followed the fundamental steps in what had to happen to start and operate a successful business. So one of the things that you're going to come across when starting a business, and again, starting from the very basics, is coming up with a name. And incredibly enough, as simple as it seems, coming up with a name is actually an extremely important part of the business, because it's the identity of what your business is. And most businesses don't realize that when people are searching, and when they're trying to find services or they're finding products, typically that first impression is actually the name of the business. So if it's not named properly, businesses tend to lose clients and not earn services, even though they're good at it, just based on something like a name. So what are things to consider when you're thinking about a name for your business? Try to stay away from putting your own name in the business. Most business owners want to put their own name in, so they'll name it Bob's Insurance, or John's Pizza, or Peter's Repair Shop, whatever it may be. When you do that, you're instantly telling the world that I'm small, I'm startup, and I may not have the expertise or the resources that a big established company has. Very few companies, I mean, if you think about all the companies in the market and the bigger companies in the market, very few of them grew using a personal name. So having a good name is actually quite strategic when you are thinking about a business. Try to make the name catchy. You want something that is easy to remember, that somebody will be attracted to right away. And try to make the name relevant to the product or service. If you give the business a name, and you know what, we've seen this lots of times, right? And especially in the Egyptian community, and I know business owners from around the country, the Egyptian community. There's Mary Mina's business or Mary Kibika's business, which is okay, but it doesn't really describe what your business is. You have to try to give names to it that are meaningful, because you're not just selling a product or service within your community. You have a much larger base that you're trying to reach out to. And ask people's opinion. Don't be afraid. When we came up with the name Sharp the first time, it was not the first name that we thought of. We thought of multiple different names until we landed on Sharp. We'd always ask our friends and family just to see what they thought of this name, what they thought of that, until they said, yeah, that's the one that works. And then once you've got a name and everything, don't design the logos and the identity yourself. Don't do that. Most business owners will sit on their computer and they'll get, paint shop, they'll go on these programs and they'll try to design their own logos with fancy A's and fancy S's and things like that. Consumers know what looks Mickey Mouse and what looks homemade and what looks professionally done. And there's services that are now available to business owners to be able to do this stuff relatively inexpensive. I put the name of a couple of services there. 99designs.com is a service online that does a logo and a whole business identity for you for $99. It's pretty inexpensive. And there's a website called Fiverr where you can find professional graphic artists that will design logos for you for as little as $5 online. That's the idea of Fiverr. So you can get this stuff done relatively cheap and making it look like it was done expensive without having to do it at home yourself. The next step is, once you've decided the name, business, what you're ready to do, you actually have to register the business. And a lot of people actually get confused at this stage. Registering the business is not just as straightforward as people think, especially around here. So before actually registering, you have to decide on a couple of things. First of all, the name of the business. And the name of the business is not just as simple as coming up with a name. Because when you register the name, if there are companies or a company out there that has a similar name that's in the same industry, you can't use that name. When you go to register, they're not going to allow you to use that name. So it's important to come up with a catchy yet original name for registration purposes. Or you can just go with a numbered company. And usually people go with a numbered company if they are consultants, if they have, they've got a business where they're just buying property and renting it, things like that. But if they've got products and services, they're typically not a numbered company. And then you have to decide how you want to register the business. Do you want to register the business as a corporation? Do you want to register the business as a partnership? Do you have a partner? So you're both registering together, or do you want to register the business as a sole proprietorship? What that means is you are the single owner of the business. Now, each one of those has different implications for taxes and for liability, so what you're responsible for. And each one has different requirements and there's different thresholds for each one when it comes to things like financing and getting loans and lines of credit for your business. Each one is a little bit different. So you have to decide what you want to do. Now, most business owners go down the road of corporation. And the reason why they do that is because under a corporation, you are less exposed for liabilities. So if your company goes bankrupt, you can be protected under the Corporations Act that you don't have to go bankrupt personally either. So you can lose your business, but you may not lose your home. So there's different advantages for each one in terms of what your exposure is for a business. So those are the two. The next thing is the business number. The business number is something that's assigned to you by the government when you go register, and that is your business identity. That is what the number you will live with the government so that they can identify you for things like taxes, payroll, GST, and all the little things that have to do with the government. That's your identification with the government. They assign you a business number, a GST number, a payroll number, and this is something you have to manage. And an accountant will manage those things for you, but that's one of the things you have to get when you're registering a business. And the last thing that's pretty important that most people don't realize is that every city, every province has its own licensing requirements for a business. Just because you want to start a business doesn't mean you go, you register, and the next day you start. There's industries that require certain licensing. If I wanted to start a pharmacy today just because I think I can sell medication better and faster than somebody else, I can't do it if I'm not a licensed pharmacist. And I can't start a pizza shop in the city of Calgary without getting the right licensing for restaurant from the city of Calgary. So it's not just professional licensing that you have to be concerned about, it's actual licensing from the city and the area you live in as well. Even taxi drivers have to be licensed to be able to sell their services, to be able to drive people around. Restaurants have to be licensed. You know, there's health inspections, there's liquor license, there's lots of different licenses that you have to have for whatever the type of business is. So this is an important thing. And the resources that are available to you are registry offices. So any registry office where you would register your car, for example, you can register your business there as well. There's online services available to register, and this is probably more recommended than doing it through a registry, because they'll actually walk you through the process. And being registered in one area doesn't mean you're registered everywhere. So it actually takes more to be able to register your company on a national scale. If you want to register it in different provinces, if you're thinking of expanding or growing and want to protect your interest early, versus just registering your business locally in Alberta. The next one is a lawyer. A lawyer can do the registry for you, and this is not the most recommended way to do it because lawyers are extremely expensive, and you don't want to spend a lot of money at first, especially when you're starting a business, on expenses like lawyers and accountants, because you can get sucked into a lot of fees unnecessarily without even realizing it. And then making sure you visit online government sites for licensing requirements, to make sure that you know, no matter what type of business you're in, what are the licensing requirements for you. Again, whether it's a pizza shop or whether it's an insurance brokerage, there is a certain type of license that is required to operate a business. So the last thing I'm going to cover today, which is actually the longest part, and usually the scariest part for most business owners, is the money, the financing part. And most people don't realize how much resources is actually available to them to start a business. And there is a lot of resources available. You don't necessarily have to start a business with your own money. There are ways to get financing so that you're limiting your risk to be able to start a business and not have to expose yourself financially. So the different types of financing are government grants and financing. These are some of the things that are available. There's financing from non-government organizations, and I'm going to get detailed into every one of these, so I'm just giving you guys the highlight. There's debt financing, which is basically loans, and then there's equity financing. So it's getting people to invest money into your business and giving shares in your business. So we're going to start with the government financing, so you know what are some of the different services available to you for government financing. The first one is called AFSC, the Alberta Financial Services Corporation. This corporation historically finances agriculture and farms. However, over the last 10 years, they have been expanding more into small businesses. So they will invest money, they will offer loans for small businesses outside of the farm and agriculture business. And in my first business, we had actually taken a loan of $250,000 from the AFSC. So they're a fantastic resource to be able to get money from. The government has a program right now that's called the Canada Small Business Financing Program. Basically, the government of Canada created this program to guarantee loans from commercial banks. So most people that start businesses don't have the financial strength or the collateral to be able to secure large loans from banks. The government created this program to guarantee those loans to the banks to stimulate people to borrow money to start their businesses. So the Canada Small Business Financing Program is a very big one for startup businesses. For people that are thinking of exporting, that want to develop a product and export it overseas or to the States, there's an export guarantee program that guarantees loans on exports. There's the Business Development Bank of Canada. This is actually a bank, not a chartered bank, but a bank that is operated by the government of Canada. And their sole purpose is to loan and finance businesses. Everything from startup businesses up to large enterprises. And they are a fantastic resource and probably one of the easiest ways to get financing to start a business would be the Business Development Bank of Canada. And the last one is ATB Financial. So people look at ATB Financial as a standard bank. We see the branches all over the province. We see the ATMs, you get your debit card. They're like a bank. However, ATB actually does not fall under the Bank Act of Canada. So under Canadian law, they're actually not a bank. They're not a chartered bank. They don't follow the same rules as banking in Canada the way CIBC would, or TD, or Scotiabank. And they are wholly owned and operated by the government of Alberta. And they're the only bank of its kind in Canada that is operated and owned by a provincial government. And their mandate is to finance and offer loans to startup businesses in Alberta. That is probably one of the easiest ways. It's almost, I'd say between the BDC and the ATB, those are your two easiest ways to get financing for startup businesses without having to give away a lot, because that is what they were created for, was to create financing and provide capital for businesses in Alberta and the BDC for Canada. So we're actually quite lucky to be living in a province that has a bank, and we keep calling it a bank, but it's not really, that can provide capital the same way as a commercial bank would, like TD, and no other province in Canada has that ability. So ATB is actually a phenomenal resource to provide funds. The next one is non-government organizations. So there's a bunch of organizations that are not government funded that will offer money for people that want to start up businesses. So if you're looking at having a technology business, for example, you have a technology idea or doing something digital, the organization is called InvestTech. And so they offer money for businesses with high growth potential. And digital businesses do have very high growth potential. We're still in the very infant stages of the expansion of the internet and e-commerce and everything around that. So that's a huge area of growth for people that understand that world. For newcomers in Canada, this is a pretty big program. It's called the Futurepreneur Canada Newcomer Program. So if you're between the ages of 18 and 39 years old, and you've been in Canada for less than 60 months, you qualify for financing under this program for a startup business. And it's relatively easy. I looked at the conditions that's required to get the financing. This is a relatively easy one, and it targets newcomers. So they're not expecting that you have high net worth, a lot of financial security, a lot of collateral. They understand you're new to the country, you haven't been here for a long time, you probably are not as established as someone that's been here for a big number of years. So this is a really, really big program that's available. And there's another one that's called the Futurepreneur Canada Startup Program, which is similar, but this one is targeted to Canadian residents. So it's pretty much the same program, but for Canadian residents, and you can get a minimum of $15,000 in financing to start your business. The next thing you can do is get a micro business loan. So these loans, there are two companies actually in Calgary that offer micro business loans, and they're intended for people that have low income. They give you seed capital to start your business, and there's very little interest that's attached to that, because the idea is for these loans, these micro loans, to stimulate business growth. And when we're talking about micro loans, it's exactly what it means, micro. So you're talking about loans that are typically less than $5,000 to start a business, which doesn't seem like much, but a lot of businesses have started with less than $5,000. Sharp Insurance has started with less than $5,000, so it is not impossible to start it with small amounts of money. And then crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is a new type of financing that is available online. Some of you may have heard of websites like Kickstarter, where people will put their ideas or products on a website that is mass distributed to a large population, and people can invest small amounts of money, $5, $10, $20 at a time, and there have been companies that have raised millions of dollars doing this. Typically, it's reserved for people that have invented products. So if you've got a new invention, not a service, that you want to introduce it to the market, crowdfunding is a big way to do this. And if anybody is interested in that, I actually have a lot of contacts that do crowdfunding and know how to raise money in this space. And it's quite a fascinating space. Debt financing, this is probably one of the ones you want to avoid as much as possible. It's extremely dangerous, extremely dangerous to start a business with big amounts of debt. So this should be one of the last things you want to do to raise money to start a business. You have massive exposure, and you will be personally liable, even under a corporation, going down this road. Obviously, the safest one is raising debt from friends and family, seeing if you have friends or family that want to invest money that you will pay back to start a business. Commercial term loans, now you're going to the big banks. You're putting your house up as collateral, you're asking for significant loans with usually pretty good interest rates, but you're now starting to take on debt for the business. Lines of credit that are available. A lot of people will start businesses off of lines of credit, their own personal lines of credit, home equity lines of credit. And that's usually okay if you're not planning on putting big amounts of money into the business. But if you're taking out a home equity line of credit for $100,000 simply to fund your business, that's a pretty risky thing. And you should be pretty certain that your business is going to succeed before going down this road. Credit cards are another one. Again, not a great thing to do, but easy access to capital right away through credit cards. And then supplier credits. So So if you're starting a restaurant, for example, you could apply for credits through your suppliers that will provide you the food or the equipment without having to put a significant amount of money up front to start. And the last one is equity financing. So equity financing means people that are putting in money, or companies that will put in money, not for debt, but to own a portion of your business. And typically, this type of financing is reserved for established businesses, businesses that have started and that are established. But there are people that will invest equity in startup businesses that'll say, yeah, I think you've got a good idea, I think you've got a good product, I don't know anything about it, but I'm going to invest some money in and take a piece of the business and have partial ownership of the business with you. So friends and family is a good one. You'll hear the term angel investors. These are investors, basically people with high net worth, lots of money, that are just looking for new ideas and new places to put their money and invest in to grow it. Lots of angel investors. If you were to search online for angel investors, you will find hundreds, especially in the Alberta area. There's lots of angel investors out there. But the kind of equity they typically ask for is significant. They want higher returns on their money. So they'll take more money than, or they'll take a bigger equity for less money than, other institutions would, for example. And everyone has seen the shows on TV, Dragon's Den and Shark Tank, and basically those are angel investors. That's basically the definition of an angel investor. A lot of the companies that go on to those shows are looking for a lifeline. They're looking for, they've got their business to a certain point or they want to get started and they just need that extra little bit of money. So they end up giving away big chunks of their business for relatively little money. It's hard to raise money through angel investing. And then there's venture capital. Venture capital are corporations, large corporations that pool big amounts of money together for big investments. So this is typically reserved for, bigger companies, more established companies, or technology companies. Venture capital is very big on technology companies. If somebody has a big technology idea, venture capital is a big way to go. And so that's all I've got for today. Today was basically just the start on how to get a business started and what are some of the things you should think about at first. And then over the next couple of sessions, we're going to dig deeper into actually how to manage a business and how to think about things like staffing, payroll, marketing, competition, and especially in this environment. I'm a very big believer that the best time to start a business is when the markets are down, when the economy is low. It's extremely difficult. It's much harder to start a business when the economy is up, even though most people think that it makes sense. It doesn't, because when the economy is high and businesses are busy, they don't have time and they don't take risks with startup businesses. They go to established businesses, businesses that know what they're doing now. So getting a business started when times are low, when the market is down, is ideal because it's slower, it gives you time to ramp up, it gives you time to establish your business, even though you may not see a lot of money, so that when the market comes back up, you're ready to go, and you're starting to flourish right away. Does anybody have any questions or anything about starting a business or anything? Or any of the things you saw today?
Approximately, what's the average for the interest rate when I apply for a loan, ATB, for example? It's an average.
It depends. So the interest rate all depends on what your credit strength is and how much collateral you have. On average, you're looking at prime plus 1 to prime plus 2. So whatever the posted rate is that the Bank of Canada sets, that's your prime rate, plus 1 or 2%. So you're usually looking at 6 or 7%. 6 or 7% is pretty average for interest rates on loans. It's actually quite a bit higher than a mortgage, for example. Your mortgage rates are significantly lower because those loans are secured by a home, by an asset. It's very little risk. So the interest rates are much lower. So about 6 or 7% on the loan.
And should I pay monthly after that, or can I take a loan and pay after 3 years?
No, you can't, and that's part of the risk of taking a loan. As soon as you take a loan, the repayment terms on the loan are right away. So you usually have 30 days or 60 days grace period before you actually have to start repayment. But the bank is expecting that those loans are going to get repaid right away. Now, if you take a loan from the BDC, for example, which is government-backed, or you took a loan from ATB, again, which is government-backed, you can negotiate different terms. So you can tell them to give you a 6-month window, or you can even get up to a year without having to make principal payments, but you always have to make interest payments. So the interest is only a fraction of what the payment would be, but it saves you a lot of money and buys you some time to build your business up. So yes, it is tough. The markets are down. We're in an economy, especially in Alberta, that is very dependent on oil. I mean, we just got some bad news today with the US government saying no to Keystone XL. Yes, that's true. However, it's not the first time that the economy has been in a downturn. And when an economy goes down, it doesn't go down. It doesn't go down by 10% or 15%. It goes down by fractions of percent. There's actually significantly more industries that are not impacted by downturns. So if you look at government spending, for example, if you look at the Alberta budget, 60% of the budget of the government is in healthcare. Which means there's a lot of people that are still working in healthcare, that are working in hospitals, that are doctors, that are nurses, that are pharmacists. And yes, there's an impact in the amount of revenue, but it doesn't crash all the way down. There's still a significant portion of the population that lives, that eats. It is more difficult, it's more challenging, and it feels like it's significantly worse, especially if you're one of the people that has lost their job in this environment. It feels like it's worse. But any startup business, whether it's good times or whether it's bad times, does not make money at first. In fact, you can expect 100% of the time that you will not make any money in your first or second year of business. You can expect you will not make any money. So it's better to not make money in an environment where there's little money than not make any money in an environment where there's lots of money and there is a lot of business out there. Because either way, you're starting from the beginning. So you got to give yourself time to establish your business, to get your operation right, to make do the fundamental things that you need for that startup so that when things come back, you're ready and you're starting to make money right away. And anyone that knows the oil and gas sector, the oil and gas industry knows, I mean, this has been going on now for 14 months or so, 14, 16 months, and we're probably going to see the same thing for the next 12 months or so to the end of 2016. But if you think about it, if you want to start a business now, you still need a few months to get yourself prepared. and do your homework and build a business plan and seek out financing, which takes you into the middle of next year. So by the time you get started, if things turn around, which everyone believes that it will, you're starting to come at the tail end of it, when things should start to pick up again. So but that's a personal opinion. That's not an expert opinion or anything like that.
Is it that we might not make money in the first year or the second year until we get the point of break-even point, that the income is like an outcome? How can we survive at this time? We have a lot of commitments like rent, like mortgage, like food, like all this stuff.
And I agree. I mean, that's one of the hardest things. And so I go back to the story of when I started my company. Before I started Sharp Insurance, and Sharp Insurance, when it was started, it was 2009, so it was right after the financial collapse, when oil prices were still depressed and things weren't so great in Calgary. And I was working my job, and I actually left my job. I was making significant money, and I left it to start the company. Now I'm not making any money, and it's tough because you have a mortgage, you have car payments, you have commitments, but you learn how to control your money. That's a big part of a business, and it actually forces you to be able to manage your cash properly. Most business owners are extremely bad at managing cash, at managing their commitments with the money that's coming in. So you have to prepare yourself when you're doing your plan that these are my commitments, this is what I have to plan for. I have to plan that I'm not going to make money, but I still have to honor my commitments. That's where cash management, and that's why I said earlier that the financial projections that you're going to do are fundamentally important, because you have to understand how much money is coming in or not coming in, how much money I have to spend, and how I have to live, how I have to pay for my house, my cars, how I'm going to eat, and do all the things I have to do. But you have to change how you live as well. This is why I said earlier, business owners have to get to a point where they realize that there is significant sacrifices that have to be made. You're not going to live the same type of life, especially at first. If you go out to eat twice a week, you're probably not going to go out to eat twice a week anymore, because you have to conserve your cash. And you'll probably eat at home more often. Or if you used to eat lunch at work, now you're going to take your lunch to work, because you have to conserve that cash. Maybe it's things like, instead of having 100 channels at home for TV, now you decide, I'm only going to spend $7.99 on Netflix instead, and not spend $200 on my cable bill. That's cash management. And those are the things you have to think about before you start. But you have to be prepared that, no, you probably won't make any money in your first year, and you might, but highly unlikely, even into your second year. But after that, that's when it starts to get good.
So treating your relationship with this one, so how much money do you need, right, to start a business and understand the risks?
It definitely varies from business to business. So, when I had started Sharp, I had a savings account that we lived off of, and it cost us less than $5,000 to start the business. But we didn't make any money for the first 2.5 years of that business. So we had to have enough money to survive, or the other half has to be making money to survive in that environment. But it depends. If you're going to start a restaurant, you could be looking at putting in $250,000 to start a restaurant. You've got to buy equipment, you've got to buy tables and chairs, and you have to hire people. I mean, there's costs. But if you're starting your own delivery company, let's say, and it's from your car, well, you've already got a car. You may not have to put as much money. And your money goes into other things like marketing and whatnot. So it really depends what kind of business. But one of the things that we're going to talk about next week is cash management and how to start a business lean. How to start it with as little money as possible and using resources that are available to you to conserve your money and still be able to have a successful business. Yeah, absolutely, and that's actually a great point, because when we're talking about starting up a business when times are down, if you're looking to acquire a business, this is actually the best time to acquire a business, because prices are down, revenue is down, which means the cost of the business is down. So this is the best time to actually acquire, which a lot of people like to do as well. I mean, it depends on how you want to go. You know, if you're looking at, again, if we're using the example of the restaurant, if you want to start a restaurant, instead of building one from scratch, take the $250,000 and buy an existing restaurant. It may not have great revenues, but you have a starting point at least that you're going to build off of. Yeah, that's something that I can put into, you know, next week or the week after's presentation to give some idea on how to evaluate a business, how to look at the revenues of a business, and how to assess what the value of a business is to purchase, to acquire. Because you're right, now is the absolute best time to buy a business. Does anybody have any other questions?
Mentioning interest rates, I'm sure you're aware sometimes that they offer very competitive interest rates against what you've paid off on a residential property.
For sure.
I think that's really or
Yeah, it is. I mean, again, it's your risk tolerance, right? Some people are okay with using their home as security on a line of credit to get a lower interest rate. If you get a loan, like when I was telling if you get a loan without security, well, the only way the bank protects themselves is higher interest rates, because they're taking more risk, so they want to earn more money on that loan. But yeah, I mean, that's why I put it up there. It's not uncommon to use the equity in your home against a line of credit to start up a business. And a lot of people will actually do that, especially when you're talking about acquisition. When you're talking about acquiring a business versus starting a business from scratch, when you need extra capital to be able to make that investment or put a down payment, let's say, home equity is a great way to do that, for sure.
Sorry, but the bank would accept to give me a loan for 200,000, even I don't have an asset equity.
Probably not. If you go to a commercial bank, they probably won't give you a loan without any kind of financial strength. But that's why you go to organizations like the Business Development Bank of Canada, ATB. ATB will give loans without security. That's what they're designed for. Again, they're backed by the government of Alberta, right? That's what they're there for. But if you're going to TD and RBC and Scotiabank, those are the toughest loans to get. Those are the most extremely hard loans to get. And they'll typically only give loans when they have security. So if you want to buy a building, they'll give you a loan to buy a building because the building is secured against the loan. But if you want to take out a $100,000 loan to offer a service, let's say you want to have a computer repair business that doesn't have any assets in it, really the only asset is you as the computer repair person, they're not going to give a loan for that because there's nothing that protects their loan. That's why some of the government organizations are much better in providing that kind of financing.
And they will discuss my business before they give me a loan, like the details. Just education.
No, you have to discuss your business with them. You have to convince them why it's good to give you money. And so they want to see, they're going to insist to see things like a business plan and financial projections. Those are the biggest things that they'll look for. They won't give you a loan without that. Even when you go talk to the BDC or ATB or any of these other organizations, you can't just walk in and say, I need a loan. I have an idea. I think this is going to work. Write down some notes on a piece of paper, a napkin. You have to walk in. You at least have to show them that you're prepared. Like the document that I have here, the business plan that we created originally for Sharp, it's a 32-page document. You know, it took some time to write this. There was a good couple of months that went into writing a document like this. And if you look at the financial projections, I mean, we're talking about making assumptions on the kind of sales we think we're going to have, cash flow projections, things that, accountants would understand, how to, balance sheets, things like that, but it's really all assumptions. You don't know until you start. But you have to be able to go in and tell them a good story. You have to convince them. Are there any other questions?